Good afternoon, friends. Today we will discuss the geospatial technology applications in urban and regional planning. Day before yesterday, my friend has spoken about the urban growth models. Today, in this lecture, we will discuss about the geospatial technology, its fundamentals, and with relevance to the urban and regional planning and some applications. Now, let me begin with urban areas in India. As we all know, as per the census results, that urban areas are ever increasing. In the year 2001, the urban population was 27.81%. In the year 2011 census, now the urban population has increased to 31.16%. We all know our urban areas, as it is increasing, it is assumed that urban areas, urban population will now constitute close to 40 or more than 40% in the year 2030. Though the urban areas have a large say contribution in the GDP, so this cannot be ignored. In that context, urban and regional planning has got relevance. Now, when I look at the decadal variation in urban population over the years, when you look at this chart where the urban population, rural population and the total population is depicted, you see urban population in general is increasing. Now it says only there are some nick points are there. For example, in the year 1950 or the year 1970, as a whole, urban population has been increasing. And at some nick point, for example, in the year 1920, the total population there was a decrease because of some reason, because of there were some diseases which have occurred, or a rural urban population has decreased because of some reasons in the year following the partition. Now, as we all know, 337 million persons live in urban areas, that is 31.16 of total population. And as we have discussed just now, the level of urbanization has increased from 27.81% as per the 2011 census. Now, that is the 2001 census, and now it has increased to 31.16% as per the 2011 census. Now, the 7 states and the union territories have got the higher urban population, and they are NCT Delhi, Chandigarh, Lakshadweep, Daman Diu, Puducherry, Goa and Mizoram. NCT Delhi has got the highest proportion of urban population, that is 97.5%. In terms of absolute number, the Maharashtra has got the highest and the Sikkim has got the lowest urban population. Now, when you look at these all characteristics, let us define what are urban areas. Urban areas are characterized by higher population density and infrastructure in comparison to areas surrounding it. It may be cities, towns and conurbations, excluding the rural settlements, for example, villages and hamlets. So, as such, any urban area should satisfy 3 criteria: a minimum population of 5,000, at least 75% of male has working population engaged in non-agricultural pursuits, and the density of population of at least 400 persons per square kilometer. Having understood the urban definition, the urban areas are defined in 4 categories. There may be statutory towns, census towns, urban agglomerations or outgrowths. Statutory towns are the all places where the municipality, corporation, cantonment board, notified area town committee, etc. they are in existence. Census towns are those towns where the such nomenclature is not in practice and where the minimum population of 5,075 as seen in the previous slide, and the 75% of main population is engaged in non-agricultural pursuits and a density of at least 400 persons per square kilometer. There are 2 more definitions here: the urban agglomerations, which constitutes urban split comprising 1 or more towns, or the adjoining outgrowth. Some examples, so they are all areas. For example, beyond the Mumbai urban area, some urban agglomerations. Similarly, some outgrowth, they are the areas around a core city or town, such as a well recognized, for example, railway colony, university campus, port area, which are lying outside the limit of the town. Now, the purpose of, let us have a look on the purpose of urban planning. Total urban planning has got the mandate of well-balanced social and economic development, improvement of life of quality of life, responsible administration of resources and environment protection, rational use of land. The urban planning spreads over varying disciplines. It's a multidisciplinary aspect where we look into the physical, social, cultural, economic, political, ecological aspects. It may be the built environment, man's interrelationship and behavior, or the financial and other characteristics in the urban area. Now, urban, we cannot ignore, as I told in the beginning of my presentation, we cannot today ignore the importance of urban planning. When, as of now, 63% of the GDP is coming from the urban areas in India. Now, the urban areas are the engines of growth, provide services and economics of scale. They contribute significantly in country's economy and employment. They have got a pull factor. There are some issues, and as the urban areas increasing, there are some issues with the urban areas. The lack of open space, inadequacy of infrastructure, mushrooming of slums. As of now, and as per the census of 2001, 61.8 million population resides in urban slum areas. The lack of services, drinking water, sanitation, and so on and so forth. There's issue is in the insufficient solid waste disposal, poor environmental quality. So as such, urban areas for the proper planning, they require timely and updated geospatial information for better management and planning of available resources. As per the census of 2001 and 2011 census, under the four categories which I have defined in the previous slide, out total 7,935 towns are there as per 2011. And as per the 2001 census, this data was 5161 towns. And among these towns, statutory towns are 4,041 as per 2011, and as per 2001 census, it was 3,799. Similarly, the census towns, they are now 3,894. As per 2001 census, they are 1,362. Urban agglomerations, they are now 475. As per 2001 census, they were 384. Outgrowths were 981 as per 2011 census, they were 2,953 as per 2001 census. Now let us have a look on classification of urban settlements. Basically there are six categories of urban settlements, and they are ranging from class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, 5 and 6. Now the class 1 towns are those towns having the population of more than 1 lakh. In this category, when you look at as per the census of 2001 and 2011 census, there is a rise of, earlier the percentage of urban population as per 2001 census was 68.7%. As per 2011 census, now the percentage of urban population in the class 1 city is 70.2%. Similarly, the percentage of urban population in other categories, they are given in this slide. Now, when you look at this data, now we find, though India's population has grown 2.5 times, but urban India has grown nearly 5 times. And as we have seen in the previous slide, that in 2011 census, that 377 million Indians were living in 7935 towns and cities spread across the country. Now it is expected to increase to over 533 millions by 2021. Now there is a need for planning, and for the planning we need data. So from where the data has to come from? So remote sensing, GIS and several other technological interventions, they provide the data. And when you look at the remote sensing, GIS, GPS and other technologies, together let us call it geospatial, their applications are manifold in urban planning. It may range from urban planning, inclusive planning, urban governance, urban environment, heritage conservation, urban design, urban utility, urban hazard. Let us take some examples and applications under each field. In the case of urban planning, because the first and the foremost requirement is the base map. Now remote sensing with its synoptic view and also the varying spatial spectral resolution characteristics, it provides good quality base maps. These base maps, when you add on the information, they can add the value and we can go for the map updation. We can go for the infrastructure mapping, land use or various kind of plans at various scale. We can look at the urban growth, sprawl, suitability analysis, and also we can go with the based on other drivers. When we ingest, we can go for the urban growth model. In the inclusive planning, we can look into the vulnerability analysis and mapping of informal settlements. Under the urban governance, there are several examples where municipal GIS, urban cadastral studies, property taxation, they have been experimented. Under the urban environment, urban green spaces, solid waste disposal management and site selection, urban heat island, urban pollution, microclimate studies, they are all have been experimented. There are applications of close range photogrammetry and other high-tech instruments in the heritage conservation. And what we can do based on multi-viewing technology and using these instruments, we can generate the 3D model. And these 3D model will help us to create the database. And this database can also help in several other areas. In the urban design, we can use the 3D city visualization, and this database can also be helpful in the urban regeneration and redevelopment exercise. Urban utility is another area where some of the recent government programs, they have got a high level of thrust. And they are the utility mapping, transportation and other areas. Urban hazard is one area where the geospatial applications have got a high role. And some of these are, it may be the microseismic studies, urban fire, urban flood and so on and so forth. We will be looking at some of these applications in the subsequent slides. In all these applications, we have got a variety of solutions. Let us look at the solutions. We can have the data from remote sensing and these data from the variety of sensors which are in space. It may be from higher to lower resolution. From the photogrammetry point of view, we have got the data from the aerial, digital, all using the close range photogrammetry. Then also we have got the data from the terrestrial laser scanner, LiDAR based. And for the data, analyzing the data, we have got a technique called geographic information system. We can also collect the data using global positioning system, which helps us to, because the higher resolution satellite data needs GCPs of higher order. So in that sense, we require georeferencing using global positioning system. This GPS or the mobile mapping unit can also help us in asset mapping. We got also recent times that newer technology which is coming up is UAV. This UAV helps us to map the urban areas. For the utility mapping, you might have seen somewhere on the road also the applications of ground penetrating radar for understanding the underground water utilities. Now let us go further and understand the technology first. In the terms of, when you look at the remote sensing technology as such, then in the terms of remote sensing, we got variety of resolutions. Which I believe by this time you understand it. But four terms are there: spatial resolution, spectral resolution, temporal resolution and radiometric resolution. Spatial resolution is got a high relevance in terms of urban planning, because normally cities, they require mapping at higher scale. But question is, there are some inherent characteristics which one has to understand before selecting the satellite data. Because we should understand that what kind of data interpretation or classification technique we're going to employ. Because there has to be a minimum 4 pixels within an object to identify. Their role of various image interpretation techniques when you are deploying the image interpretation based visual interpretation methods. There are other issues, that is the land use versus land cover. There are also the significance of spectral resolution, because we have to differentiate between the urban and non-urban, and also within the urban several urban areas which may have variety of rooftop or other characteristics. Now in that sense, one can use multispectral data, and the technology which has to come up, that is the hyperspectral data. As of now, from the foreign data sources, hyperspectral data is available to some extent. And in India, ISRO is trying to launch its own hyperspectral database remote sensing satellite. Now we have got temporal resolution, which has got high relevance in urban planning, because we have to understand the land use transformation. Because when the cities are growing, after all, it requires land, and the land comes from the surroundings or within it. This land use transformation one can readily understand using the remote sensing data, and this can help us to understand the urban sprawl growth, and also for the urban growth, prospective urban growth modeling. Radiometric resolution has also got some relevance in urban mapping, because it helps us to differentiate between the features. Now when we talk about the spatial resolution, we have got three categories. And three categories are high spatial resolution, where the resolution is 0.6 meter to 4 meter, and we've got variety of satellites which offer the data of this range. We've got medium spatial resolution, that is 4 meter to 30 meter. Again, we have got a number of satellites, and the low spatial resolution, 30 meter to 1 kilometer. Let us take a quick look of some of the satellites. This list is not exhaustive. You can visit other data sources where you can understand various other satellites which are offering. For example, we have got Iconos, Cartosat 2 or 2B, QuickBird, WorldView1, WorldView2, or GeoEye and 1, and so on and so forth. You see the launch date, pixel size, swath, that is the width of the each frame, quantization, that is the radiometric characteristics, and whether the stereo acquisition, that means seeing the area from two different angles, whether this facility is available or not. So let us take one example. For example, the Iconos, which was launched in 1999 and has got the panchromatic band of 1 meter, multispectral band of 4 meter, swath of 11 kilometer, quantization and stereo acquisition. It has got a stereo acquisition capability. Then we have got Indian remote sensing satellite series. We have got the Cartosat 2 and 2B, which is launched in year 2007 and 2010 with the pixel size of 0.8 meter with a swath of 9.6 kilometer, 10-bit quantization, and with stereo capability in one of the satellite. This slide just shows the various satellites, sensors, number of bands, spatial resolution, and the data is available from the period it is available. Now this list again is not so exhaustive, because looking at the data frame which is available to me, but you can kindly visit the other resources. Now when this data set is available, what is their use? Let us dwell on this issue. So there the issue is the kind of data selection versus the planning level. So that in the terms of planning, generally we talk about regional perspective level, meso level or micro level. So in the macro level, why should we use the higher resolution satellite data? Because the mapping scale is in general 50,000 or higher, where in that sense a data of 80 to 360 meter is sufficient. When go with the meso level, with the medium resolution satellite data, something like 4 meter, 30 meter at a scale of 10 to 50,000, that will do good. In the micro level planning, higher resolution satellite data is required, because we have to prepare the project micro watershed level or the village level or the zonal plans. So there we require the mapping scale of 1:1000 to 5000. Now look at some of the applications. For example, In the case of urban planning, when we talk about the perspective plan, where the urban land is at level 1, maybe level 2 also, we can generate. But when you go to the meso level, then we have to go to level 2 of land use land cover, for example. And when you go to the micro level, there we can go to level 4. That means your information your scale is increasing, your polygon size is relatively larger, and then also the information content has increased, right? But only point here that we have to choose what are you looking for. In terms of other characteristics also, we can, whether it is infrastructure planning, disaster, rural development planning, we can choose it. Now, again the question is whether it is a perspective plan, regional plan, development plan or local area plan. Again, it also drives to a point that what should be the time frame. That means at what interval should it be done. So this is the data which has been taken from the URD-PFI guidelines. You can refer to the URD-PFI guidelines, and then again the periodicity has been defined. Now, when you look at the total from the perspective plan to the local area plan, one can devise from the perspective plan, we can go higher, we can generate the regional plan and the development plan. From the development plan, one can generate the local area plan or the special area plan. So this way, from the regional to the urban to the micro level, the planning is perceived. Now, question is, because the data generation, data collection is one of the important issue, and large amount of energy is invested in data collection. So in that sense, there are several data sources are available, and these data sets are also used for several planning realization. For example, Department of Space in coordination with Ministry of Urban Development, the program we have contributed, and the program is National Urban Information System, where large scale urban geospatial database for various levels of urban planning, infrastructure development and e-governance has been, the scope has been given. There we have generated 12 primary layers and 4 incorporated layers in partnership with various other agencies. And as of now, for 152 towns, this database is available to the common citizen for visualization. And for the specific users, I mean for the user at state government levels, this data has got the higher privilege. Now, this, when you see, look this satellite, and this data is it is available for 152 towns spread across, as I told in the beginning, for the 6th category of urban settlements. Now the data, as I told, that we have got the variety of data sources, and in the ISRO's Bhuvan web portal, we have got as of now more than 300 cities. The database at 1 meter resolution is available. And this slide shows some of the examples, and this data is from the Bhuvan. Kindly visit Bhuvan for visualization of data for the other Indian cities. And this is the data for other part of the Delhi. Now, once you have got the data, now point here how the information content increases with the skill of the interpreter. Let us take some example. When you talk about the urban areas, when you go for the perspective planning, so it will be close to 1:50,000 level. Here, the built-up land will constitute only one polygon. When you go for the development planning, where the scale would be close to something like 12,500 or 10,000, whatever. So here, now the built-up land will be further categorized as residential, industrial, commercial, recreational, so on and so forth. When you go to the third level in the zonal planning, the same residential area will be categorized as high-rise, medium-rise, low-rise, slums, seasonal and others. When you go to the specific project scheme-based zonal plans and so on and so forth, then the high-rise further it will be defined as whether it is apartments or flats. It may be row houses or tenements. So this way the information content increases. Other details are given in the subsequent slides. Now let us look, having understood the technology, data sets available, and I believe now you also understand the interpretation methods. Now what are various applications? I demonstrate some of the applications in the urban and regional planning subsequently. One important or at the beginning, because in urban areas the 2D and the 3D has both have got the relevance. Why? Because we want to understand the space use, because space are limited. That means land area is limited. So we have to optimally utilize it. The remote sensing has got the benefit. Either using the automated method or the manual methods, one can understand the 3D geometry of the buildings. Based on 3D geometry of the buildings, one can find out the build and also the 2D mapping. This together helps us to understand the space use. Now, high resolution satellite data, when you look at the example here, this shows the building footprints. And now, when you look at in the 3D perspective, it helps us to understand the floor area ratio or the floor space index, how you call it. It's nothing but it's the FAR is total built up area upon the total area of the plots. So once you do it, you are able to find out what is the space use. Another example is the population estimation. Though the population estimation, enumeration is the primary technique. But as of now, the population estimation to some extent, it is also being used by the people engaged in population enumeration. And the one of the popular method is dwelling unit technique. What it does, nothing but understanding the number of families and also the size of each dwelling unit, and it is assumed that each dwelling unit is occupied. No, there are some limitations are there, but even then some sample area more than 90% accuracy we have found out. Now, the one very important application of satellite remote sensing is understanding the sprawl. Sprawl is nothing but how the cities are growing. Now, this growth will be within the city and also the outside the city. Now, look at one example. This example is for the Dehradun city. You see that Dehradun within the Doon Valley in the year 1987, 1992, 1998, 2000 and beyond. It is growing in varying directions, in omnidirection. And then we are trying to find out, based on the sprawl, which direction city has grown. For example, till 2003, the growth was primarily in the southern direction. Once the land got exhausted, now subsequently the growth is happening in the other directions. So one can find out the growth, that means what is the current extent of the city area. One can find out a direction, and also one can find out what is the pattern of growth. So this sprawl has got very high relevance. Now, once you have understood the sprawl, now because when the sprawl is happening, the urban area is going to consume the land, and this land will be the adjoining land which is taken from the adjoining or within the city. Now, this growth that can be understood using the satellite remote sensing data. Now, this is the study which has been done for the Lucknow area. We are trying to find out what is the area of the city over various areas. Now, we can also do the growth modeling and then try to find out, assess when the city is growing, what is the area of the city versus the population growth. And one can understand the land use transformation. That means from which to which category the land use has got changed. For example, agricultural to built up area, how much, what is the percentage, and as a geographical area, how much change has occurred. From the plantation to wetlands and several other categories, how the land use transformation for urban areas is happening. Now, when the urban areas, because the urban growth, it seems, looks inevitable. That means there are people who are in the influx to the city has to happen. Now, in that sense, we have to find out where is the scope for growth within the city. That is the subject of urban expansion, suitability and evaluation. That means we have to find out, based on characteristics of the land and other characteristics, whether it is good for urban or not good for urban. Now, what one has to do, one has to generate various layers, and these layers will be existing land use, land cover, connectivity or approachability, slope, geomorphology, hydrogeomorphology, and then one can use various methods. It may be methods will be based on arithmetic simple linear combination of several layers, or based on some subjectivity analysis and giving some weightage. And this is the domain of GIS, and some GIS based technique one can use and go for the urban suitability analysis evaluation. And this shows one example for the Jammu city where urban suitability analysis has been carried out. Now that the city is growing, there is always pressure on the services. Now when the pressure is there, and also in the context of the smart cities, now the people are talking about how to make the services better, or in the context of the Amrit program. So one can generate various kind of information system. This slide shows one of the information system for the urban areas where the electricity is available, what is the percentage of the built area, what kind of land use in practice within the urban area. So this way several kind of information system can be generated. Now in terms of services, the water is the foremost, because several guidelines have been given for the per capita water availability. For example, CPHEO states that the per capita water availability in city area where the sewage system is not there should be 70 LPCD. And wherever the sewerage system is available, it should be 135 LPCD. So this way, one can find out the based on population enumeration for different wards, one can find out what is the demand. Once we have computed a demand, now we have to compute or equate it with the supply. Now for that reason, several methods are available, and the recent times geospatial technology can also help us in mapping the water distribution facility, and also head gradient being created, and whether this head or gradient created is able to supply the water to the beneficiary who is located at the tail end. Now this is the one example what we have tried when we assessed for a particular city. We have found the total requirement of the city was 102 million liters per day, and the supply as a whole is 80.28 million liters per day. Now this demand supply gap is 22.22 million liters per day. So this way, as a whole or for the spatial basis, we can find out what is the supply and demand assessment. Now, as I told in the beginning of the slide, we have got the remote sensing data also available variety of spectral bands, and the thermal data is particularly helpful in understanding the urban heat islands. Because when you look at this particular frame of the satellite slide, you see how the temperature, land surface temperature is varying in respect to the varying land use. So with the rural landscape, with the commercial to the residential and suburban. In general, whenever the concrete surfaces, they appear or they are in dominance, there the temperature is higher as compared to the non-concrete other non-urban surfaces. Now the thermal band, whether it is a single band available in the satellite data, mono window technique, or the two bands available, that is the split window technique, one can understand what is the temperature pattern in the land surface temperature pattern within the city, within the ward area, or various kind of land uses. Now this another applications, as I told in the beginning of the slide, that is the hyperspectral remote sensing, because you see that because based on variety of rooftop types, based on the age of the building, based on the various land use, land cover, suppose you want to differentiate between the various building material. It may be brick, it may be the concrete roof, based on the road surface or the bare soil or sand. This way we can differentiate based on the satellite data. But only point here, the data which is available as of now, that is a Hyperion in the archive mode, but the spatial resolution is coarser. But we understand, and that near coming up time, we are going to have the satellite data which are good which are have got the hyperspectral as well as the higher spatial resolution characteristics. Now, in terms of urban transport, we have to also understand whether the transport capacity as of now, because when the urban population is increasing, we have to also understand the urban transport carrying capacity. In that sense, there are some junctions we have to study. For example, in this particular slide, we are trying to assess for a particular Y junction in the city, whether what is the person, car which is moving on the road, and also is there any blind corners or what is the alternate available. Now, the 3D modeling has got a very high importance in the urban and regional planning. Now, in this particular slide, we have experimented with Cartosat-1 stereo data, and using the stereo perspective model, we are trying to assess what is the height of the building. And using this method, we have found out that on an average for the various buildings, for various heights of the buildings, we have found, and for various density of the building, on an average, we have found out the 1.9 meter as compared to the manual methods have been noticed. Now, because some limitations are there in that sense, we can also use the LiDAR based technique for estimating the building heights. There, the accuracy will certainly improve, and we have observed the accuracy to the range of 0.2 to 1 meter. But only point here, the availability of airborne LiDAR data is scarce. Because the flood is another problem within the urban areas, and you might have noticed in the newspapers recently. Now, whether the remote sensing, GIS and the geospatial technique as such and the field data, can it help us in understanding or zonation of urban areas in terms of flood hazard? Yes, there are some models and methods which require remote sensing data and which are use the hydrological models for doing the zonation of the based on urban floods. And in this slide particularly we are looking at, in the first, for example, one has to compute what is the total quantum of runoff which is available, at what intensity, that means the intensity duration IDF curve, and for various regions, and based on one can compute what is the peak discharge at various frequency interval. For example, for the given urban area, one can compute for the based on meter cube per second, that is the QMEP, what is the discharge available, and you see the frequency and the quantum and the quantum of discharge is increasing based on the periodicity. For example, at 5-year interval, the highest discharge, that is the peak discharge, is computed as 123 meter cube per second. For the at 100 years interval, for the same given area, for the same stream, the discharge is computed to 38 meter cube per second. For sure, when the quantum of discharge is increasing, and if suppose the carrying capacity of the river is insufficient, the water will flow on the surroundings and the surrounding area will get inundated. Now, this computation can be done using remote sensing with some input from remote sensing data, and once we overlay the expanse of this flood water on the land use land cover map, we can compute the area which are getting affected with the urban flood. Now, with this, I have thrown some light on the urban applications. Now let us dwell on the regional, because the regions are nothing but a portion of Earth's surface having homogeneous physical conditions. It may consist of some few villages or a number of countries. The region has got very high relevance. It may be an agricultural region, resource region, city region, or the planning region. It is not necessarily used with the urban context. Now, the region has got some characteristics. It may be area, boundaries, image, change. That means it contains some area, it is separated by boundaries, some surrounding regions, and it has got some image. That means you are entering, for example, you are entering into the national capital region. And there, as is happening over the urban area, and there's a change also occur in the region also. Now, any region has got three regional characteristics. One is the core. For example, within the national capital region, the NCT is in the core. Within in the periphery, we have got peripheral region. In terms of resources, in terms of other characteristics, generally the core region is affluent, and the peripheral regions, there the services are slightly inferior. And within the region, we have got one more characteristic that is called the maladjacent region, where which is dependent on, for example, some industry. Suppose the industry has gone not in operation, now the revenue or the economic resources are in crunch, so there will be some decline. Now, regional planning has got some relevance, because when you talk about the urban, because urban, when you urban areas are not developed in isolation. We have to also look at the regional planning, because these together, they have got some sense of regionalism as well as element of cohesion. So in terms of regional planning, we have got three levels: macro, meso, micro. So macro level means it is very coarse and national or some regional level. Meso level means state, intra-state or region. Micro means district, block or watershed level. Let us look at some characteristics of the examples of the regional plan. There will be hill region, desert area region, river valley resources region, Western Ghat region, watershed region in plan. Let us take some example. For example, India is divided into various agro-climatic zonation based on combined characteristics of biological, and then ecological and several other characteristics. It is divided into several regions. In terms of climate also, world is divided into 6 climatic regions. Now, when you look at the regional planning, we require data. Now, this data will be resource data. That means, what is the land use, what is the soil, water, mineral sources, so on and so forth. We also require demographic data, agroeconomic data, socio-economic data, or the infrastructure data. Then this data we require for what? It is required to understand the present state of development, projected needs of the plan period, and if there is any gap. So once you have understood, then what are the inputs from the remote sensing GIS? As we all know, using the remote sensing GIS, we can generate land use, land cover, forest map, soil map, because region is a multidisciplinary aspect. So we require multidisciplinary maps, topographical maps, hydrogeomorphology, cultural, water potential, drainage, wastelands, and so on and so forth. Now again the issue is, because this regional planning is a data intensive, are there any sources we can generate, we can collect the data? Yes. Indian Space Research Organization has launched a program in coordination with the central government, and the program name is Space-Based Information Support for Decentralized Planning. This program is particularly aimed towards planning planning at panchayat level. But at the same time, this data can be used for regional planning. Primarily, this CSDP project has generated data on seamless mosaic of 2.5 meter resolution satellite data for entire country. We are also getting into the assets mapping at 340 levels. And then finally the program is aimed for planning at panchayat level, that means outreach, that means PRIs and citizen approach is also required. So as I told, total 340 assets will be natural resources, productive, civic, human resources, governance assets. Total 340 kind of assets are being generated. Now you may understand this is a very exhaustive exercise. This cannot be done in isolation. So it's a program which is ongoing across the country in partnership with various state remote sensing application centers and other centers of in the country. Now, when you look at this program, this we have got this Bhuvan portal, which has got similar hydrogen satellite data and various other kind of data, which is also helpful in the regional planning. So this shows the portal for the Bhuvan Panchayat where the outputs from the SysDP project is going to reside and disseminate to the common citizen. We got other data of the regional planning, and this data will be from the Bhuvan or other web portals which are offered by the Indian Space Research Organization or other institutions. Now let us take a quick look on some examples of regional planning. Now this shows regional planning at watershed level. Now the scope defined within this project is to have a data generation, integration, and for the planning of land and water resources. Here in this case, this is the Indian remote sensing false color composite. Using this data and also the topographical maps and other data, the watershed boundary and the sub-watershed boundary and nomenclature have been defined. The slope map for various slope categories have been defined, land use map has been generated, and then soil map and the hydrogeomorphological maps have also been generated. Once this information has been generated, now we get into two things. First is the land resources development plan and the water resources development plan. Now the important point here, through the data integration technique, that means the data which we have generated in the, as we have seen in the previous slide, they are all integrated in the GIS domain, and the land use becomes the base polygon. So with the land use as the base polygon, for example, let us take some category, the forest blank within the forest area, agricultural within the cropland of the agricultural area without trees, for the given slope, altitude, geomorphology, and some recommendation. And this recommendation is to enhance the vegetation characteristics, to improve the agricultural practices, to minimize the wasteland, or to better utilize other resources. They are all given here in this particular slide. Similarly, for the water resources also, to enhance the utilization to optimally utilize the water resources, whether it is a subsurface water or it is a groundwater, they have been worked out. Now this, for example, in the surface water resources, check dams, spring storage tanks, rooftop rainwater harvesting, so and so forth, they have been worked out. Now again you can have variety of decision rules. For example, let us take check dam. So check dams in areas will be required, because after all, whenever the check dams are there, some inundation will be there. And also you have to look at the slope of the river, you have to look at the stream characteristics, you have to look at the adjoining land use land cover, you have to look at the geological characteristics, geological structure characteristics. Once you integrate it, from your decision rule, you can find out that where the check dams will be feasible. Similarly, other action items, you require some decision rules. Yeah, let us take some examples of the regional planning in urban context. One example I'll particularly mention here, that is the National Capital Region Planning. Now you are all, as we all know, as you move, for example, to NCR Delhi, you see as you are close to cities like Muzaffarnagar, Meerut or beyond, or the Ghaziabad, similarly the surrounding cities in the Haryana or other states, you see before you have reached to the Delhi, you experience the hustle and bustle of the city. And that is the kind of feeling you get, that is the regional planning. And in that context, you see the NCR planning, now it constitutes more than 22 cities. And recently in the month of June, 3 districts have been included, including Muzaffarnagar, Zind and Karnal. And within the NCR planning, we have got the metro centers, regional centers, and also the counter magnet areas. Because the employment opportunity, they are relatively higher in metro cities, and there is a reason for that influx. And when you take the regional planning in right context, and as we have seen, the base on the once the urban planning came into being, there are urban population within the NCR Delhi, NCT Delhi, they are slightly lesser, and their pressure on the Delhi is slightly decreased before the NCR planning has been taken in the approach. Now, I'll conclude my presentation here with a term called smart city, because urban planning as on today, because we have reached to a stage where there is a high pressure on the city. So in that context, the city has to be grow in a smart fashion, and such a in this smart city it encompasses so that people have got the smart economy, smart mobility, smart environment, smart living, smart governing, to have a better tomorrow, a livable tomorrow. So smart city is nothing but when you go expand the acronym, and this we understand, S stands for sustainable solutions, M for management of resources efficiently, A for active citizen participation, R for research and development, transport, T for transport efficiency, C for communication network, I for infrastructure development, T for technological advancement, Y for yielding better quality of life. And geospatial technology again has got a very good role in smart city planning, because we require information, we require data. So geospatial technologies as such, they've got a higher role where we can generate variety of GIS based maps. We can go to the periodical monitoring, sprawl, growth, and several things, as we have learned this in deliberation today. Thank you very much.